So, I hurt my back a couple of days ago, and I'm pretty sure it happened by doing this, and also trying this. So, I'm really bummed because today is Ben NORBY sharing with us about the book of Ruth, and one of the things that Ben NORBY is really good at, amongst many things, is running. I wanted to, in honor of Ben sharing with us today on the vlog, I wanted to go on a run and try to get one of my best times ever. That's not gonna happen. Sorry, Ben, but without further ado, here's Ben NORBY.
Hey guys, my name is Ben NORBY, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a senior in high school, and probably like all of you, I am in quarantine today, so I hope you're all doing well in that. And today I'm going to be covering day 92 of the J137 vlog and going through the Bible in a year chronologically. And today we're going to be going over the book of Ruth. Ruth is actually one of the shortest books in the Bible. It's only 4 chapters long, but I think it just has a lot of really good content for us to take away from it. So I'm going to go and start off with a chapter by chapter summary of it, and then I'll kind of talk about how that's impacted me and how I kind of see some references to Christ in it. Ruth begins off in chapter 1 with Naomi and Elimelech, her husband. And in a time of famine, they move to Moab, away from Israel, and their 2 sons take on 2 Moabite wives. But after going through some misfortune, Naomi loses her husband and her 2 sons. And so she hears news that there's food back in Israel, and so she packs up her stuff and tries to dismiss her 2 daughters-in-law to return to their people. And Oprah goes, but Ruth clings to Naomi and is determined to stay by her side. And so she promises to go where Naomi goes, to stay where she stays, to live where she lives, and to follow Naomi's God all of the days of her life. And so they return to Israel, but we see Naomi is bitter towards God, and she blames a lot of the hardship and hopelessness she's going through on God. But then in the 2nd chapter of Ruth, we see that Ruth starts gleaning wheat off of the field of Boaz. And Boaz is a man of God and a relative of Naomi's. And even though Ruth is a foreigner, she still finds a lot of favor in Boaz. And so Boaz kind of takes her under his wing and tells his workers to be dropping wheat for her, and he asks that she'll continue to work on her field where it's safe. Naomi's outlook kind of starts to change because she sees that God's providing for them through Boaz. And so in chapter 3, Naomi commands Ruth to visit Boaz's night to ask them to redeem them and to purchase Naomi's estate. And now this is kind of scary for Ruth because she doesn't really know how Boaz is going to react. But she has courage, and she goes and puts a shawl over her head and wakes him up. And rather than acting poorly towards Ruth, he praises her and says that in the morning he's going to try to redeem Naomi's estate as long as one of the closer kinsmen in their family decides not to. And then in chapter 4, at the marketplace, Boaz ends up redeeming Naomi's estate, and the other kinsman turns it down because he feels that it'll harm his estate to take Naomi in. But Boaz doesn't care about that, and instead just chooses to show love to Naomi and Ruth. And so we really see God's provision for Naomi and Ruth. Even though they started off hopeless, God provided for them, and then God even blesses them with a child named Obed, who becomes the grandfather of King David. I think there's a lot of aspects about this story that have even impacted me, and especially kind of in this time we're going through right now. And so the first thing is that we see that there's a lot of hope in hard circumstances. And I know a lot of us are kind of feeling alone and isolated right now, and maybe we're feeling like God has kind of turned his back on us. And that's probably how Naomi was feeling at the start of this. But we see that God just provides for people, and provides for people that seek after him and honor him. And even though it might not be in ways that we see coming, God gives us provision and a reason to look up. And then we also see that God has grace for people that stray away from him. At the beginning of this story, Elimelech didn't necessarily trust God's promise that he would provide for his people, and he goes off to Moab, a place where there's enemies of Israel, and he allows 2 of his sons to take on 2 Moabite wives. Even though he'd gone astray from God in that sense, God still blesses Naomi and Ruth and still uses them in his kingdom. And this is where there's some parallels to the story of Christ. When Christ died, the veil was torn, which allowed Gentiles to be a part of God's kingdom, not just his chosen people. And so we see, even as early as the book of Ruth, that God is using foreigners. Ruth is a Moabite, and not only does he use her in his story and to show who he is, but Ruth and Boaz become ancestors of Christ, which we see in the genealogy in Matthew 1:5. And we can also see, as Boaz redeems Naomi's estate, God redeems us that same way. And so that's where I see a parallel to Christ. So I hope that all of you guys can be encouraged by this, and thank you for joining us on the vlog today. God bless you.
Alrighty. Well, I am getting dressed for, we're going to do some family photos today, just out in the field, which will be exciting. But gotta say, Ben did an awesome job with Ruth. It can be challenging doing an entire book of the Bible, and you did a great job. And the whole idea of the kinsman redeemer and how that so beautifully points to Jesus. It's hard to find stories like that so clearly emulate Christ and what Christ has done for us.